the institutional healthcare investors with some family offices and the like on top of it, mostly US, also Europe, and has a long history, and you can look it on the webpage. The second thing here is AO Invest. So the AO Foundation is a world-spanning foundation which was founded and which contains today 20,000 surgeons exclusively in the areas of trauma, orthopedics and spine, and some maxillofacial and neurosurgery. The AO was founded by physicians in the 60s. They were the people who introduced screws and plates for correcting bone fractures as instead just casting. And they had all these patents which Synthes every year paid a lot of money for, and at one point they bought them out for over $1 billion so that they don't have to pay every year, and now, as you know, it's a part of J&J. So AO has a research lab in Davos, 50 plus researchers in all the fields that relate to musculoskeletal systems. It does all the education for Johnson & Johnson Synthes, the trauma worldwide. It has a big organization to do education in these fields worldwide, and it's a non-profit also, I have to say, so surgeon-led non-profit, a big endowment, if you will, and they devised a small fund because they thought, they obviously are able to judge the value of new technologies as well as to when they promote them or when they introduce them into the courses to really have an impact on the view of the field in general onto a certain new technology. So AO Invest invests typically maybe 5 to 6 million over the lifetime, starts with anywhere between 1 and 3 million maybe, and obviously brings the company into in the whole cloud of the AO family, if you will. And we have currently done 4 investments, one in Israel, one in the US, some in Finland. So quite diverse, we can go all over the world. We don't do biotech, I have to say, so we would do devices as well as health tech, IT based.
Good. Diana Saraceni, I co-founded Panacas about 3 years ago. I have 20 years of venture capital experience. I also co-founded another investment company called 360 Capital about 20 years ago. I've been an investor managing several funds, and with Panacas we are fully dedicated to medtech, including diagnostic and digital healthcare. So we don't invest in biotech and biologics, but we invest in any other play in health, in life science. We invest all over Europe, in Israel, and in the US. Very global. So this is certainly not my first Resi conference. To Dennis' comments, I've been several times in attending the US format of the Resi conference with I have to say, a lot of pleasure and success. Very good format. Dennis, congratulations, Mr. Resi.
Thank you.
And we do invest from seed to B rounds, C rounds sometimes, because we go up to 5 million. Normally, B rounds is a little bit of our limitation in size. We invest out of a fund that it's about 100 million today.
Hello, my name is Christian, and being Viennese myself, I'm quite glad that you found my hometown as the entry to Europe. We are one of the CNS investors in Western Europe. Well, not even Western Europe, we invest in Austria only, because we're dealing in very early stages, and we believe that early stage needs a close proximity to the investor, or between the investor and the investee. We've got about 50 million under management, therefore we do rather smaller tickets than my colleagues here, the maximum being 3 million, with a maximum of 1 million to begin with. There's some more dry powder after that. We've got something like a dozen investments in our portfolio. There's one maybe major difference between most of the other funds, which is we're not a closed-end fund, and therefore we keep investing all the time. I'm personally responsible for life science investments, which is defined very broadly with us. This might even include agtech or anything related to hardware, maybe sometimes software, in the life sciences, environment tech, anything like that we look at. And yeah, I'm glad on the panel here. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. How many people in the audience are actually raising money? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How many are raising money for medical devices or diagnostics? Okay, great. So then you want to hear what these people have to say. That's really important. You know, what we see going on is there's, in the Resi conference theme, we do drugs, devices, diagnostics in digital health. And, you know, what we're finding is we're seeing, like, all of a sudden this stuff is converging, like the guy who did the artificial human synthetic insulin is now trying to put a payload on the pancreas that sticks outside your body that's going to be talking to the digital health app and using your iPhone to send commands to the device. And it's like, there's a lot of stuff going on in the diagnostic and the device, and the drugs are going to be a payload, but they're, you know, they have their own initiatives out there. But there's a lot going on, and I was just in Taiwan, and I met with 100 companies, and like 95 of them had custom silicon monitoring and application chips to the next generation of applications that are out there. So I was wondering if we just go down a little bit, what is your sweet spot for investing? What specifically are you looking for when you come to an audience like this and say, if anybody's doing this, make sure you give me my card?
Well, from our side is really simple on this, which is that there's a bunch of stuff now which is generating data. And the process of generating data is becoming easier and more regulated, and it's more straightforward. It's the analysis of the data. That's, if I wanted to summarize it in a simple term, that at the moment is the bit that's the
How many
weakest
people are
link.
generating data out here? Fabulous.
All generating data, and it's just the analysis of that data is the key piece for us that is differentiating between all of these.
And what are you specifically looking for?
I would say, you know, health tech, which is relevant to orthopedics, trauma field, and then the hardware. And I'm personally, you know, having done biomechanics, I'm really a hardware guy.
Okay.
That's where I feel comfortable. And of course, we have I have younger colleagues who are totally tech and don't know nothing about bones, you know.
Right.
So we split that up. But frankly speaking, I can more comment on hardware stuff here. What we're not so hot for is, I mean, diagnostics, I have to say. I mean, I also know from the other here, from New Harbor, that diagnostic is just a tough space, frankly. And as said, biotechs, we just don't.
Well, we have Graybird here today. I don't know if any of you guys have seen them, but they're one of the biggest diagnostic investors out there. And if you get a chance to see them walking around, how many have diagnostics as part of their product? Okay, so Graybird's here. They're like the guys for early stage global diagnostics. What are you looking for?
Well, I should say a great significant impact on medical benefit on patients. Which is not obvious when you invest when you don't invest in therapeutics, when you don't invest in drug discovery, because we only invest in devices and diagnostic. But the end game has to be, and digital healthcare, the end game has to be the same, a disruptive, significant impact on patient therapies, if you want. And so if it's diagnostic, it's a little bit more complicated to demonstrate, but it has to be the case. And if it's devices, it has to not to be a Me Too type of device, but just something that is treating something that is not treatable today, or reducing dramatically the cost or the access to some.
So what are you seeing here today?
Oh, lots of interesting companies. Again, I mean, some new companies, which I mean, I've been scouting Europe for 20 years now, and I'm still surprised that there's companies I haven't met,
Yeah.
which is good.
Great. And what are you specifically looking for?
Well, I think it's a bit closer related to what Diana said, which is what I like to see is meeting in so far unmet medical need. We're not so much into apps. We're also not very much into oncology. In fact, we don't do oncology in any kind of deal, whether it's therapeutics or diagnostics, because we don't have the sort of money to invest in that field. But I like hardware that, as I said before, meets an unmet medical need. We occasionally look at pharmaceuticals and therapeutics as well, but very cautious because of the size of our fund.
Yeah. So, when we go around, we travel all over the world for many, many years, and when we look at the diagnostic and the medical device marketplace, the first question I have, like, how do I chop this thing up? Is it iterative? Is it, just doing something that's really great, but it's just, moving the needle a little bit? Or is it breakthrough? Is it, some kind of intelligent, artificial intelligent gel that they're putting in your system? Or is the thing transformational and, what's really going on? So we try and cleave the category that we're looking for, because when we see something iterative, we go, that's $100 million plus market. We see something breakthrough, we'll go, okay, that's $1 billion, and something transformative could be trillions. So you're always trying to, find, what's a really great product that fits my theme of investment. So what's the best way for somebody in the audience to figure out what you're doing and then how to contact you? Like, a lot of times people are saying, we just met an investor on a panel, and if any of these guys want to follow up, how do people create a dialogue with you?
I've done one cardinal sin, which I've come to an international conference without a single business card in my pocket.
That's okay, they have cards.
First of all, you rely on Resi. The second thing you do, if you're doing anything to China, you rely on WeChat, which is a particular mechanism. If anyone's serious in China, you have WeChat. But in terms of getting hold of us, that's fine. In terms of getting our attention, unfortunately, the China nature of what we do means we're later stage investors. So the technology needs to be able to be commercialized relatively quickly.
So what time frame? Like, how would you describe where it's at?
3 years to a value inflection point that I can.
So you guys out there have from where you are right now, 3 years plus. Can you hit the commercial milestone?
Depends how easy I make it, how the hurdle is.
Yes.
You can, and you have to be able to do it. If
Right.
you're working in this space, you have to be able to move that quickly. And I think there's a very big difference between the biotech and this space in terms of the nature of the investor investment, the investment commitment in terms of term, in terms of scale, in terms of frequency, in terms of projects. Then they are very different profiles. But we have this myopic, which is it China relevant? Most things are. Is it China ready? Is it developed enough? And those are the two things that click the switch for us.
Okay.
Oh, well, in our case, we already have a very focused area, right? Which is the one that I described. So I'd say we are totally agnostic, whether it comes direct cold calling, sent in from another VC, from a placement, which is not so often because it's earlier, I would say if something comes from an AO surgeon, one of those guys, and especially if he's somewhere, up the ladder, that's always also helpful. But at the end of the day, we don't have to do what pleases do. I mean, we are like really a commercial VC. We only want to do things where we can make money for the firm, for the endowment. So it doesn't matter. It's all what it is. I don't care where it comes from.
So what's the last hot product you invested in?
The last hot product, I'd say the two last products are interesting. So the one before the last was an augmented reality navigation for spine out of Israel.
That's
super high tech. Basically, you put on these glasses, and you don't have to have the navigation on the screen where you have to look up, but you look on your hands, and you look through glasses which project the bones underneath into your eye. So it's like you're virtually like Superman. You have X-ray vision. You look down on it, and you go down with the needle, and you touch, the spinous process, and so forth. So that's quite exciting. The other one is a little bit more hardware oriented. Is a Finnish company with a so-called growing rod. So for limb lengthening or for straightening the spine in kids which are still growing.
Wow,
You would think that's relatively hardware, and I mean that it's just an interesting example because I was investing in a precursor company of that called Ellipse Technologies, was sold to Nuvasi for 120 million, and I was also a little involved with the fundraising of it. So that was a growing road for children who have scoliosis. You have to uprighten them, but then they grow. So up to now, they had to go in every 8 months, make a little cut, loosen the screw, retighten the screw to compensate for growth. So they had something where you can create 5 centimeters of growth just through external magnetic activation. And so I was talking to people, you know, all the good firms in Europe, for instance, you know, I was showing to them and say, oh, this is great. You know, if my kid had that problem, I would immediately call them. But you know, I think it's so niche, blah blah blah,
Right.
and they all missed the 10x on it. But you know, that's hindsight, obviously. You know, I'm just saying sometimes it's
Well, the
really
next time you
an
call.
interesting niche. Yeah. Sometimes it's just an interesting niche and not where everybody's running to you run as the 15th, right?
Mhm. So what are you looking for?
Well, actually, the question was how do they have to get in touch with us? I mean, whatever.
Best way to start.
However, whatever they like better, they reach us. It's fine. We don't have no problem with cold calls. The one thing that really captured our attention, if I may give a little bit of a hint,
Sure.
is if very soon in the very initial pitch deck, which we don't see that often, there is a little bit of a comparable story that is put forward. Like, yeah, we're doing that in that specific space, and be aware that similar story has not to be identical, of course. We need disruptive innovation, but that comparable story and is similar because A, B, and C ended up being a $1 billion company on the stock exchange, or ended up on a trade sale for. I mean, this is something that we don't see a lot in the first pitch. It comes after requests, etc. But it works very well, very nicely with ventures. Because it's sometimes in devices and diagnostic, it's difficult to believe that it's big enough to make a $1 billion story. We all like to have that
Right.
in mind. But if you can tell, well, you know, similar, very good, and that immediately attracts our attention. So that's my
So that helps you size
my
the
2
deal.
cents.
It helps you size the deal a little.
Right.
Right.
Just cut in.
Yes. No. It helps to say, well, I mean, that's a story I have to look into
As quickly as possible.
with care.
Yeah.
No, I think that one thing we will say is that when you find the founder or the technical guy who really knows the market, and they've done this and they're developing that, you get a fantastic sense of the positioning of it. I'm really not interested in the wonderful numbers that end with a BN that the consulting firms put out about a
No,
market
of
scale.
course.
Everyone fills the business plans with these scales and I don't care about that. I'm really interested in what the competitors are up to and what you know about that. And that makes a massive difference to our assessment of the situation.
Yeah, I totally agree that the worst business plans are those stating that there is no competition. Absolutely. Well, the way to address us is whatever you like. Grab the phone, give us a ring. Cold calls, again, no problem. We won't have time for a couple of hours on the phone, of course. Nor will you.
To touch base.
Yes. Just exchange a few sentences to make sure that it makes sense to send us a pitch deck, or start with the email to begin with a pitch deck. Each is fine with us, really.
So you're really into my realm, right? Because I have to convince PhDs and fundraising CEOs, you got to make cold calls. And they're going like, well, I was told in my incubator that I could only call somebody if I know somebody that knows the guy. And I'm like,
No.
then how would you ever be able to get anywhere? You have to pick up the phone, and you don't want to call people that are blind, that you don't know anything about. But if you've read their profile, you know what their investment mandate is, and you're a fit for it, your stage of development in your product, it takes 5 seconds on the phone to say, hey, I found out a little bit about you, I read your investment mandate, I'm a fit for you because I know you're into looking for spinal cord devices that are next generation. Here's what we've done. You hang up the phone, and if they get a cogent, lucid cold call, that's a fit. It sounds like.
No problem.
So, you know, this is one of the things I spent half my life trying to convince somebody that you can actually make a cold call and it's okay.
But don't ring the non-biologics investor if you're in knowledge. Honestly, don't do that.
Well, I mean, that's the thing you have to realize. It has to be a fit
Yeah.
for who you are and the person you're calling. If you haven't done the little bit of work that's necessary to find out, looking at the tombstones on their gravesite, looking at what their theme is of the investor and seeing who the players are and what their backgrounds is, all listed on their website, you get an idea of like, are you a fit or are you not a fit? And that's just a little bit of work. So we really recommend that.
You know the timid European entrepreneur.
Oh, please, let's not do
The
that.
timid European entrepreneur has a little trick here, which is they can just look down the company names and they will find somebody on the different
Eventually.
companies that
Eventually,
they
on
can get
LinkedIn
an
or-
intro
yeah.
intro to
Sure.
LinkedIn or whatever it is, and so you can rely on some sort of link, but just make the call.
Yeah, and so, you know, this is what we just preach this. It's like you've got to get a list of investors that are a fit, and you have to canvass them. You canvass them by making a phone call, a cold call, or by sending an email with a, you know, not something that's lengthy, but something that's relevant with a couple of links they can click at. And then if they've clicked all 3 links, you'd say he must be somewhat or she must be somewhat interested. Maybe I'll give them a call. So there's plenty of things we can do here. What about the don'ts? What don't we want to do to you, Simon?
Well, ring me up about fintech
Precisely.
for a start.
Right.
What don't you want to do? We're really quite robust at telling you to go away if you
I'm sure.
if you do. So we don't worry about that. The only thing not to do is to not make the call. It's really simple.
So you're saying, for the love of St. Pete, go for it.
Anyone has an open first call.
That's lovely.
The
That's great.
7th call in the wrong direction is a little frustrating. but,
Right,
you know.
exactly. Don't do?
Well, first, I mean, you said all these obvious things about looking what the groups do, but you know, interestingly enough, again and again, and especially I have to say in conjunction with conferences like this, you get all these people contacting you, which obviously didn't have a single look at the webpage what you do. You know, not a single, and I mean that
Well,
already is a non-starter.
I would have to give a little bit of thing here, because what we do in our partnering system is, first of all, we take all the investors and we personally load their profiles in. And then we take the fundraising CEOs and we match them against the people. And then we say, of the 150 investors here, here's the 20 you want to request meetings with. So we actually match them up, and we've been doing it for like 6 years, which is completely different than in the other partnering systems where you spend your first 5 minutes, are you picking my pocket or am I picking yours? Like, who are you? You don't know who's on the other side. But on our thing, you should know the person. One's a buyer, one's a seller, and they've been matched up by our system. But anyway.
Yeah, it's still, you know, obviously there is many others too, and
Yeah.
I still
Yeah,
see
yeah.
such a lot of people who didn't even have a single look.
Yeah,
That's for me
yeah,
just
exactly.
unprofessional. I would say the other thing which always kind of, I don't see it that much, but in the past, you know, in the heydays, then they come and they want an NDA just to even know,
Yeah, well,
to
that's
tell you what
crazy.
the name of the company
Right.
is already. That's for me a no-go. But the thing is always, the more fuss they make about it, the more crap it is, frankly.
Right.
Actually.
So this is a really good point. You know, when someone tells me, I'll go up and say, first of all, are you raising money? And they're like, I'm like, are you raising money? And yes, how much? And they don't even know what they're doing. So getting some answers to some basic questions before you go and talk to an investor could probably make, you know, the conversation a little bit better, which is what we try and get people to do, make your entry-level conversation cogent. Any do's and don'ts?
I have 5 don'ts, but 3 are very basic, so I'll go fast. One is don't come with a preset valuation. Something I personally
Yes,
hate.
that's funny.
Sometimes when it's done by some external party,
Yeah.
no, thank you. I mean, we're professional. It's our job to make evaluation and that. I mean, you can give us guidelines, etc., but not with the deck. At least not in early stage. In the late stage, is different. Don't have a concern that the idea could be stolen. That's the other one. And then everything is more. No, we're not professional of going out building companies and copying ideas. It's definitely not our job. So Don't be afraid of that, and don't be stressed out of getting feedback. The other thing, sometimes yes, we are slow thinkers, so it takes us time to. Sometimes we're very competent and very experienced in a field. Sometimes we're not. It takes us time. We speak a lot to clinicians. Clinicians are not reachable the day after or the same day you wanna, etc., etc. So but the two very basics, if I may, the first one is don't go talk to venture capital first. It has to be like your 10th pitch, not the first, because so speak to
Family offices,
endowments, and this goes against my own interest, if I may, because they may find the deal before we see that.
Right.
But at least, I mean, in the end, you have a much better chance if you come to see a venture capital, which is somebody that only does the job of interviewing CEOs every day, 3 or 4 times every day, etc., etc. He will come with the questions that you may probably, if you have heard those questions before by a little bit of a less experienced guy, you have a better chance to have those questions addressed. Yeah. So, and the other one is don't follow up on things that were not the concern of the venture capitalists. We always give feedback. We tell, this is the thing why I'm not following up. Well, in 90% of the cases, we give feedback. There's 10% we don't, but we say, we're not following up on this due diligence, we're not entering the due diligence because of ABC. And then all of a sudden, after 3 months, we've done monkeys. Yes, but this was just not my point. So please note it down, what's wrong with what and come back on the specific point, because we also take notes, and wherever that doesn't match, it's really not good.
So those are fabulous. Is there any do there?
Oh, the comparable, I said that before.
Okay, that's fabulous. So, the one thing that comes up a lot is like, I'm afraid to tell, so I got hit by a lightning bolt. I'm the only person who ever came up with this idea on the planet. Or I'm just one of the mushroom spores that flew out with this great idea on the planet. I'm one of 200, I'm one of 2,000. And the guy who works best will get money and will win. And so most of the people I talk to, they're saying, well, I got hit by a lightning bolt and nobody does what I do. And so I have a database of 52,000 companies that I track. And I go, okay, really? You do brain chemistry? And here it is. There's 300 people that do exactly what you do. No, that's impossible. Well, here's what you just said you did, and here's what they said that they do. So, when you're really trying to figure out what your value is, and you're going like, I'm doing this thing and it's so different, you really need to do a market landscape, and you really need to see who the hell's out there and what they're doing, and then really know, like, there's 5 people out there, and like these 3 guys are the top competitors, and where do I fit and why am I better, which is kind of what you've been asking, like net it out for me. And that's, that is really important. And then the other thing is I'm in stealth mode. This is yet another topic that we can, blow up the sky. But to me, the value of a company is not your technology, it's the people that the technology comes from. And if you spend all your time freaking out about the value, like I'm not going to tell the VC they're going to steal it, they're going to give it to my competitor. I just never have seen that happen, and I'm 66. So I haven't seen a lot of thievery and, stealing of stuff. But it does happen, yeah, and you want to be, make sure that you've got your act together. But stopping a conversation from happening because you're worried about being in stealth mode or you're worried about someone stealing your IP, it's a little bit rough, and you should kind of rethink that. Can we talk about, down there, Christian, about what branding and messaging, when a company comes to you and you look at what their tagline in their elevator pitch, in their PowerPoint, and how they've, put their whole conversation together, how do you look at that? And do you look at it like, well, how do you look at it, the branding and messaging?
Well, the first question I'd like to answer or get answered is, which kind of problem is it you're solving? Is it really a problem? How do other people deal with it? Very often I get approached by ideas saying, I'm the first one to solve that problem. Well, the problem isn't new, so people must have been dealing with it in some other way. Ignoring that is definitely a no-go.
Yes, okay.
So that's what I'm looking for, and team it's definitely.
But what about quality of the presentation that they're giving you? I mean, like, did they put thought into it, or just, something esoteric that makes no sense and you're trying to, get through it?
Yeah, if it's esoteric, it's definitely a no-go, yes.
I mean, what quality do you see? You seeing good stuff?
I like to see some sort of quality. Which I do not like is the typical McKinsey approach.
You don't need Hollywood.
No, that's also a turn-off.
Diana, what about you as far as
Well,
quality of the
No, actually, because we do a lot of, not a lot, but we do seed investment. Most of the time the quality is so and so. It's more about the science, and when we go, if we see that this is really addressing a medical need that's relevant, we go a step further anyway, even if the quality is poor.
Does anybody have any questions? Because you've got the investors here. Does anybody want to ask anything or say something about your company? Like, what do you think of this? Or is there any input? We got 10 minutes left, so we can keep on talking, or we can have someone ask a question. Yes?
Yeah, so my name is Marcel Kloos from Camelot Ventures. We're raising a new fund in the medtech and health tech space. You see some changes in the medtech, whereas 5 years ago we could easily sell a company without any revenues. Currently, I mean, if you have a medtech, unless it's really breakthrough, you need maybe 2 to 5 million total sales to get a Medtronic or a J&J active. So, what is your experience in when is a medtech company exitable? Because that sets your expectations when you invest in them.
2 million EBITDA.
Not even revenues.
Yeah, that's what
That's good.
That's what we.
That's cool.
2 million
Because,
EBITDA.
because we're doing China and its later stage and its revenue and it's going into. So that's where we get a bit different to most of the people.
I mean, regulations also getting tougher in Europe. So, are you seeing a trend that companies move to the United States? And you indicated that in the beginning. So, why start in Europe anyway? Maybe.
Well, I mean, so I'm a big fan of Asia, right? And I'm a big fan of China because, we have probably 250 Asian partners, investors, channel partners that have money outside of China, which is the first question you want to ask a Chinese investor. Is like, can you get your money out to give it to me? And if the answer is no, then you don't want to. But we just, when people say diagnostics devices, no. When we talk to the Chinese guys, they're going, yeah, bring them to us. So I find if you look at the Chinese marketplace, and we're bringing our Resi conference there, November 12th, we're going to be in Shanghai, and we're going to have a lot of Asian investors there. And then November 14th, we're going to Taiwan, Taipei. And we're going to be picking up Korea, Japan, Singapore, and all the other ones there because you got to kind of divide up that Asian rim a little bit. But the people that are here today from our conference, there's just a lot of Asian money, and they really know what they're looking for. And well, you can comment way better than I can.
Well, it's the same. They are looking for new technology to apply in their market. They've got a massive amount of change that they're focusing on in terms of swap from pure reliance on traditional Chinese medicine. 15% access to Western meds. They've set the target as 80%, so that's 80% of 1.5.
I mean, we have this guy called Wei Gao, and this guy named Gang comes to our place in Boston, and he says, Dennis, so they're in Wei Gao province. They have 40,000 people in their building. That's their corporate headquarters. And he says, here's a list of like 60 products I need. And the category's going right across medical devices. And he goes, I can't find these. So we're like, can you help me? And I said, yeah, just come to my Resi conferences because you'll find all these med tech guys that have a lot of these products. So they're really actively looking. We had like 2 panels of Asian investors at this Resi conference just looking for technology. Any other questions? Robert, you got one?
No,
Go ahead.
that's okay. Yeah, we talked a little bit about how disruptive tech has to be, right? I'm from NLC, a venture builder based in Amsterdam. We're around 30 companies in our portfolio now, and they range a bit in how disruptive they are, right? But what we see is that the less disruptive they are, the easier the adaptation is, because they don't change the whole care pathway or implementation, right? So
The good news and the bad news, right?
But I'm curious to know from you guys, how do you see the adoption rate, and what are the key successes in that for really big disruptive technology?
Good question. Anyone want to take a whack at it?
I'm just not sure it always has to be disruptive. I mean, I've been talking to people, they looked at something and then they say, we only do things which can give us 10x. And you can be assured they would be so pleased if they had the 3x on the average. It's just not happening. And I think on the medtech, it's all about risk-return ratio, right? So again, most funds would be thrilled if they had the 3x on the average, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So if you, even if it's not super disruptive also is high risk, high return, and that's just not everybody's game. And one of the promises, at least always was, of medtech was that this ratio is kind of different. Maybe you only make a 3-4x, but your downside risk is not so huge,
Mm-hmm.
So it's all about capital efficiency, about being quickly first in man and showing these things. And and not I will sell then. I mean, everybody always tells that. I mean, there is like windows of opportunity for an exit, but the company has to be able and to execute as it will live on to also make the next, and if not, then the next after the next exit point. I mean, everything else is nonsense.
Chris, did you have something to throw in there?
Yeah, I would say disruptive is okay if it doesn't disrupt the workflow. We've experienced that trying to introduce medtech into the market that makes the doctor change his workflow completely is a no-go.
Okay. Yeah, we acknowledge the differences, but the question remains that if you do have a really disruptive technology, what can you do to still...
You mean something like
Well, that
Uber,
stage.
how it disrupts the cab industry? I mean,
Something
yeah.
that does
But
change
we still
the
partner
workflow,
all our
right?
stuff. We take stuff, when we go to China, we find someone else to partner it with to make sure we can get the access. So it doesn't matter whether it's disruptive or not. Who am I going to partner it with? But the only thing I would say on the previous question kind of thing is one of the most important things for an investor to do is not to lose the money. And that actually makes quite a lot of difference to your portfolio return. The whole MBA theory that you have 10 investments and 7 of them go bust, that's not a very good strategy. So if we can find projects where we can have a higher chance that it's not going to go bust, that's actually a bloody good start.
Christian, go ahead.
Yeah, when I said don't disrupt the workflow, I meant don't make it more difficult. If it's far easier applying your medtech in a simpler way, then it's fine.
Yeah.
But if it just makes it more awkward for the doctor, forget about it.
We've got like 3 minutes left, so I love the questions from the audience. Do anyone have any other questions? Because I like to hear. Go ahead, please.
So specifically to Simon, so we have 2 products actually. We have one which has CE mark and Health Canada licensing, which is a self-collection device for cervical cancer, HPV testing, which could go to China now.
Yeah.
And then we
Oncology is great, CE marks is great, come and talk to me afterwards.
and then we have a secondary product which is a point-of-care platform for women's health and sexually transmitted infections.
Yep.
And that's a little bit outside of the timeline that you were talking about earlier. So
Yeah.
having the two, one closer to market and one a little bit outside of your time frame, could that be an interesting compromise?
Kind of. It
Yeah.
should be,
Yeah.
but we're still in a kind of shorter term focus. So
Yeah.
The straightest line to cash.
2022, we already have about $500,000 in revenue
yeah.
with the first
Okay.
product.
Okay.
Sorry, 400,000
I
Canadian.
completely understand the strategy,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
not necessarily my LPs don't necessarily quite
Sure.
see it the same way. So, yeah, the first one.
Yes,
Yeah,
please.
well, so we were talking about cold callers, and we also do that, and I also mean it. But my experience, because as you know, I'm also a little on the other side.
Yes, yes.
With Asia, it doesn't work whatsoever. Never ever hear back. Never ever. So I mean, what's the recipe there then? If you don't know
WeChat.
people perfectly?
The answer's right in front of you. It's one particular platform that we do actually use. The first thing I look at every day, and it does work. Anything email, conversations, calls, cold calls, not a
So in my company, we have probably, I don't know, 60% Mandarin first language, and they all use WeChat. And so I've been trying to get this one company for 3 years to just talk to me. Can't get anything, and I just hired this person. She comes in like, yeah, well, wait a second. Yeah, Yeah, not a problem. Next week we've got a time. It's like, how do you do that?
So
But it's
it's a
understanding.
person-to-person, high-level,
Yeah.
connection.
So everybody knows what WeChat is, right? Right, so I mean, it's when in, do as, I think is really what you're saying.
Strange that.
And WeChat works. I mean, you can get into the, and then they form these communities around these WeChat conversations. You go one thing and all of a sudden there's 200 people there.
Yeah, but
There's
then
a
if you're an
couple.
investor, you leave the group.
Yeah, but,
If it goes to 200, you leave the group.
Yeah. So-
You know.
so anyways, so that's all good. We had another question, I saw over there, please go ahead.
Yeah, I'm interested in people's views on how early stage is defined. because we-
Oh, that's a great question. Let me answer that. And you need to get on the radar screen of someone. So if you go up to someone like Simon and you go, I'm 10 years away from EBITDA, but I just want you to know who I am and give me 5 seconds, he's gonna give it to you. So you're on his radar screen. If you see him 2 years, remember I was the crazy guy? I'm now, it's gonna be 3 years, but I wanna let you know. And so just getting on someone's radar, you can't bore them for 3 hours when you've got a concept, but just going up and introducing yourself, I don't think you're ever too early, and that's what my investors tell us.
Do remember also that we have the notes from the last time.
Yes.
We do.
Is it ever too early?
I actually, yes. If I may.
Just for a 5-second conversation to introduce himself?
No, you're right. I mean, 5 seconds, but then we won't remember after 5 seconds. I have to be fair. I mean, we meet like 600, 700 different
Exactly.
investment opportunities. So the 5 seconds is fine. I mean, come to us, but we won't remember. So I don't
We're
know
out.
if it's a good
We're
way
done.
to spend the time.
Sorry, we just got
Sorry.
the book. Thank you
One
all
last-
very
one
much.
Last point for the guys. The invitation to Wuhan is real. If you want to come to China, we also have an interesting piece of work I've done over the years, which is called Founder Syndrome. It's actually subtitled 10 Reasons to Sack the Founder, and it's all about the
Am I
relationship
getting fired
between founders and investors. And it's a really hard dynamic for you guys in the entrepreneurial scene. And anyone's interested in talking about what not to do, that's where we'll start.
I thank you all very much. See you at the cocktail party at 5.